I hear a lot and even experience myself is that like initial panic of like, oh my goodness, does my child have like no resilience? Can they not tolerate like the smallest little things? It feels big. It feels like mad. It feels like irritated or sad, but really it's frustrated.
Welcome to Lulubug's podcast for parents, where we empower you with the tools to help children become confident, resilient, and ready for life's adventures. Hosted by creator of Lulubug's Garden, Jil Hunter, and child psychiatrist, Dr. Karen Menotis.
Welcome to Lulubug's podcast for parents. Today we're going to be talking about a feeling that keeps leaving children very aggravated and angry very often, and it's the feeling of frustration. In Lulubug's Garden, the episode that's about frustration, Willow gets so frustrated. Even though she's practiced, she just keeps messing up the keys on the keyboard. It's really frustrating for her.
It's so common in young kids who are just learning so many new things every day and new skills, and their imagination of their vision has surpassed some of their motor abilities. And so it can be very common for kids to experience frustration every day, if not multiple times a day. And so we're going to talk about what that can look like, talk about what's going on in the brain, what's going on in development, and how we can help as parents have kids, be able to manage that frustration and go through the frustration rather than having us as parents rescue them or, try to do things for them. First of all, I love that we have the show and with the podcast as a companion for parents, because it's really starting to, like you mentioned, give a specific name for children, for young children who are experiencing these big emotions, to be able to label exactly what they're feeling, right? It feels big. It feels like mad. It feels like irritated or sad, but really it's frustrated. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the difference and why that matters for parents today.
Will you give us the brain science behind it a little too? Like what actually happens in the brain when the children are frustrated?
Yes, that's a great question. So first of all, there is, and I mentioned this a little bit briefly just a bit ago, but there's this huge gap, right, in kids that are developing between 3 and 7 years old, really, 3, 4, 5, but even into 7 years old, where, they can picture the perfect drawing or the perfect tower that they're building in their imagination. Their imagination, especially for these 3, 4, 5-year-olds, are just blooming, and it's so integral to their development in this period of time. And so their imagination can picture it. They can see it. They can see exactly where that little piece is supposed to go. But their motor skills, their fine motor skills and their gross motor skills are still developing. So what that means is the messages coming from the mind, from their brain to their fingertips, right, to allow for the action to be completed, to finish up that tower that they've worked so hard on, isn't quite lining up. And it is so aggravating to them when it doesn't work out. When frustration happens in young kids, but really, in general, in the human brain, what happens is they're envisioning, right, this really tall tower.
Yeah.
And as they're building it, and as, they're getting small surges of dopamine, which is our motivation chemical. It's also our reward chemical in the brain, that gives us sort of the anticipation feeling of getting excited about what's going to come, what's going to get accomplished. And when that tower falls over and they don't get that outcome that their brain was expecting to happen, then the dopamine levels actually plummet, even sometimes below sort of baseline. And what happens there is what we call a negative reward prediction error. What that means is that what the brain expected did not happen. And so it sort of detects it as like an error, right? Like a false prediction. And so what happens after that drop is that it sort of the brain detects that as a threat, as like as something that is dangerous, right? And it fires your amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system deep in the brain and the emotional centers of the brain, the limbic system. And that's where we get that fight or flight response. Anytime the amygdala is activated, we get, the release of these stress hormones and adrenaline, and that's where we see the meltdowns, the behavioral outbursts that look very similar to a child who's angry, a child who's escalated, because that last little bit, the amygdala activation, is the same thing that can happen if they're angry or upset. So that's why when parents ask, well, why won't they just like listen to some reason when I'm there just telling them it's okay, we're going to build a new one, they literally cannot hear the words that are coming out of your mouth in that moment. The thinking part of your brain, the front part of your brain, and even it's been shown some of the language centers in the brain have less blood flow to them. So they become less active, less able to function in that moment. And so when you crouch down and explain that it's going to be okay, they literally cannot hear you. So it's not them being defiant. It's that they need to come to a calm place before they can listen to logic.
It's actually funny that you mentioned tower, because that's not a memory I would have necessarily just grasped right away or remembered. But that definitely, it seems every single one of my kids, we would build towers. It would collapse sooner than they wanted it to, or they just couldn't put another block on. And they would feel so much frustration about it. But also what I would notice in those moments, very often trying to blame this feeling outwards, like, oh, it's mom's fault, or it's the block's fault, or somebody's fault.
Yes, that is one very common way that frustration can appear, is externalizing the blame, right? You gave me the broken marker. That's why it didn't work. Or you gave me the broken block, or this block is faulty, or, whatever it is. It's very irrational in the moment, but that is very commonly a way that young children sort of express frustration. We also can see frustration in other ways, like just anger and just having, a tantrum. Frustration can also look in young kids as like sabotaging their own work, right? They can almost get that last piece in the tower and maybe like half of it falls off and they just like throw the whole thing over and say, well, this is dumb anyway. This is not fun. This is a silly game.
Yeah. Or even like ripping a painting that they've been working on, but it was just not going their way, like ripping it or throwing it away and saying, I don't like art anymore.
Exactly. And then having sort of an all or nothing, right? And kids in this age, it's very common based on where they are developmentally to have all or nothing thinking, binary thinking of, it's really hard for them to say, well, look at the gray, right? Instead, what sometimes can happen in kids because of this piece is that they're just like, well, if this tower didn't work out, then I'm just a terrible
tower builder.
Yes.
And at this age, is that even appropriate, or can we teach them already that there is not just black and white, that there is this gray area, or are they not actually able to grasp that idea?
Well, just like everything that we talk about on this show, it's never too early to start teaching them.
I was assuming you were going to say that.
It's never too early to start building that foundation by using essentially narrating for them and narrating the experience for them in a way that can say, hey, you were working on this tower and you envisioned it to be really tall, but it fell down before you can get there. And you are still learning how to build towers. You will be able to get there, right? If you know that your child, their fine motor skills maybe isn't quite developed and they're trying to work with like small Legos or there's a skill that they're still trying to, master and that you guys are going to be doing that ahead of time, whatever it may be, right? Your child, something that can help. Obviously, this isn't going to be doable every time because we don't know when kids will be frustrated or when they'll try something and it won't work the way they expected it to be. But something that can be helpful is really decluttering the space. For example, like if you are doing some Legos, a table covered in 40 toy pieces means that their brain is burning energy, just filtering out the chaos, right? All the other Legos that maybe are on the table. And so I always say, like, try to declutter the space as much as you can, clear the table, if you're working on, I'm just going to stay with Legos or a tower here, just put the necessary pieces that they need to accomplish that one step on a tray or on the table, so that they can focus on that and not spend so much brain energy just even on everything else in the room.
Hearing that was, as a mom of 7, the first thing I hear is like, oh no, those Lego pieces weren't there from him. They were there from the older child, and they want all the Lego pieces there. But like, do you have any suggestions like with that? I feel like it almost can cause a little sibling rivalry too. Like the idea of like, why can they do it and I just can't? Or why do you let them do this and I can't? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, talking about it out loud, even pointing out skills that maybe your older kids have not yet mastered. And again, the more you practice something, and the more that you try again, the bigger that muscle and that skill, the better that skill gets. And so your older sister, your older brother has already practiced and been able to get that skill when they were your age. And now they're working on different skills that they still haven't mastered. I just think that, narrating your own experience as a parent when you're feeling frustrated and doing the same, making it that culture in your family for your kids too, where they can say, I'm feeling frustrated when I can't get this, or when this doesn't turn out as I wish it did, can be really helpful for the youngest kids in the family. They can see that it's not just them that experiences this, it's all of us.
Yeah. And it seems like it's a great opportunity too for the older children to maybe help the younger child too. Just lend them a hand, help them, or have them help you. Or let's say they have a project or some activity they are doing, the older kids, find one that's kind of similar to the one. Maybe grab the bigger Lego pieces out and let's say, hey, he can do that one, but let's do this one together.
And then also helping, when your child is calm and the moment has passed, help them retroactively connect the dots of saying, maybe at bedtime you can say something like, hey, do you remember yesterday or remember earlier today when you were trying to build that tower and you really were excited to make it as tall as the ceiling, but it fell down. You really felt so frustrated. You felt your chest was tight, your heart was racing, you're so angry. Narrating that for them, and so that they can connect the dots of the name of the emotion, which is frustration in the moment, with the feeling that they had at that moment, can be really impactful after the fact.
So, well, 2 things actually I heard in this is like, first of all, their realistic outcome that they're expecting for a child is probably actually way bigger than for an adult. Like they would probably more realize how realistic it is to build the tower to this certain height. But for them, it probably can almost be growing up to the ceiling. So it seems like if that tower falls over, that dopamine drop is even higher. And it makes sense why it would be such a big emotion to them.
Right.
But then also so they are now in this big emotion. How do you help them in the moment then?
That's a great question. And so we always start with ourselves, right?
Okay.
As parents, that is always the very first step. So take a deep breath. It can be so aggravating. And I think some of the things that, I hear a lot and even experience myself is that like initial panic of like, oh my goodness, does my child have like no resilience? Can they not tolerate like the smallest little things? And once you start thinking about it from a, physiologic and from a what's developmental and what's going on in the brain standpoint, it really helps bring some calm and empathy and patience to our forefront of our minds as parents. And that's why I share on the show and on this podcast about the mechanism behind the behavior, because I do think that it helps bring some empathy and some like a different perspective. So in the moment, we'll start with ourselves. We take a deep breath. We step back. We remind ourselves this is not defiance. This is not a lack of resilience. This is a child's brain really struggling to manage a really big process that's happening. And so from there, one of the things that I like to start with kids that are escalated or frustrated is movement. And actually, occupational therapists use what we call proprioceptive movement in children to help calm their nervous system. What that means is oftentimes it's deep pressure. Vibration can also be proprioceptive. But really, a really good example could be, crouching down to your child in that moment and saying, I see, right? We always in that moment use short, concise words, right? They can't hear a lot of our explanation, right? But you can name it. You can say, hey, you're feeling really frustrated. You thought that tower was going to be so high and it fell over. That is so frustrating. And your body and your hands are feeling really angry. You can take your hands, crouch down, and tell them, push my hands as hard as you can, push me all the way to the wall. You can also do this with a wall. You can have them try to push that wall over. And that deep pressure, that heavy lifting work can really help reset their nervous system. That also helps that like adrenaline and that energy that they have inside of them have a place to release as well. So starting there can be really helpful if they're not in a place where they're willing to engage in that because they're so dysregulated or just angry and frustrated. Another thing that you could do is have them just step away from the situation, right? Change the setting. And it can be as simple as, hey, actually, I need your help in the other room for a second. Can you come with me? Yeah. Have them come with you and give them a heavy basket of laundry to help you put away. Can be sort of a indirect way of giving them heavy work, right? That same sort of movement piece, the heavy work that we're trying to accomplish, but in a way that they're not really even realizing is happening.
Yes.
Other things that can be very helpful is bringing in sort of a new sensory experience for them. I really like using cold. So you can hand them an ice cube in the moment or even use a cold, damp cloth to put on their neck if they'll allow it. And that jolt that breaks the mental meltdown loop and pulls their attention onto something in the moment.
So I actually feel like I do remember very often using techniques like you said, where you really have your child help you with tasks that are actually not just made up tasks, but really tasks you actually need them for and they feel needed, but especially heavy lifting or heavier things or pushing something or pulling something or in the yard, that does really work.
It can be very helpful. And, I think, you might be thinking, well, my child is literally like right now throwing toys across the room because they can't build this tower or button this button or whatever it is. They are never going to come help me with something.
Exactly. And it's so situational. Like really read the moment. Don't make them do something that seems totally awkward.
Right. That might escalate them even more.
Yes. And listen to them, feel them. But I think the biggest part is probably find your own calm so they can borrow it in that eye level conversation and even that being present there with them or giving a tight hug or just being there for them, knowing you're listening and you're seeing it.
Exactly. And feeling it in the moment. It's also the way you narrate it, right? The way you sort of present it to them can be very effective if you're doing it in a way that's not like, hey, I know you're really frustrated. You can't button your button, but come help me with laundry. Like that's probably not going to work.
Yes.
But if you're like, you know what? We're all feeling really angry right now. We're all feeling really angry because this is a really hard task that you're trying to get to. Let's just take a minute, step away and come with me because me too. I also need a break. Yeah. And then when you're in another room with them, then maybe have them engage in some sort of wall pushing or pushing your hands or make it a game or do, a temperature contrast.
Yeah.
And that can be really effective. Bring them to a place where they're not in that setting anymore, where they're seeing that tower that's collapsed. You've sort of distracted them from that, but then also regulated their nervous system through movement and or sensory changes. and then come back to the situation and help again, name the feeling again, validate that, hey, it makes sense that you're feeling this frustrated. I would be really frustrated too. In fact, I need a break myself because that seemed really frustrating. And then really get back to, the activity at that point when they're feeling more calm.
Yes. And I do also would like you to share one more time, because I feel like over these years, I've seen this happening, not necessarily my own family, because I feel like I really quickly learned that this doesn't work very well, but you hear it very often, that it's almost the caregiver parent being so frustrated that their child is acting the way they're acting and just telling them, don't stop it. Like, why are you doing this? And it seems to just make it worse. What is the child hearing in that moment?
Right. Well, the child right there is hearing like, they already feel like they messed up, right? And to them, their mess up feels so much bigger than it does for us. And when us as parents are saying, hey, it's okay, like it's going to be fine, like just calm down, that really invalidates what they are feeling. Like they know in their mind that it's not okay.
This is so something I love about Lulubug's Garden Show and our podcast, that we always come back to this, that it's really okay to feel all these feelings and to have them.
Right. Right. It is okay. And what we want to teach kids is that they can express it with their words. They can learn to find ways to feel better, even though the feeling might not go away completely, but they can manage it. They're in charge. They're in control of their emotions. And there's no emotion that is wrong. Right.
The behaviors can be wrong. Like if your towel falls over and the child, let's say, blames the sibling and throws the block at the sibling's head or something, that is obviously not okay. But the feeling is the one that's okay.
Absolutely. The feeling is always okay, and the behavior may or may not be. And that's sort of the lesson that we teach when the child is calm and regulated. Yeah. So we also, going back to that moment where we go back to the activity, we don't want to avoid it altogether, right? If the child is calm and they're willing, I always recommend have them and you go back to the activity, and don't do it for them, right? But I say do 10%, not 100%. So if they're, let's say they're trying to button their button and they just cannot get it, help them hold the button into close to the hole, and then let them be the ones that do the last finishing piece, right? So they're the one that pushes it through all the way. And that piece is so important because it shows them that, with some support, but also with continued effort in maybe with a different approach, that they can accomplish things and they can find the competence in that skill. And the more and more they do that, the more confidence they build. And so with that piece, going back to the brain science, when you allow kids to have that outcome, the positive outcome, the competence, the accomplishment that's linked to their effort that you've helped get them to, it releases dopamine, which again helps with motivation. It helps reinforce learning, and it helps them want to try again.
What could we do wrong as a parent in those moments?
I think it's really common and easy, right, for us as parents to want, in the moment when kids are so frustrated, to just jump in and do it for them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You're seeing your kids struggle, and it's a really uncomfortable feeling, and you know that as soon as they don't get it, they're going to probably melt down.
Yeah.
And we want to try to avoid jumping in. We want them to experience these emotions. We don't want to rescue or save them from the emotion, because even though maybe they haven't quite developed the skills, this is the learning opportunity that you can have that's so valuable for them to learn, what is this emotion? What is this feeling that I get when I try, and things don't work out the way I want them to? But how do I get through that, right? How can I learn the skills if we're not allowing them to have the opportunity? And so that's probably the most common thing that I think as parents we tend to do, outside of, getting upset or lecturing them or correcting them immediately. The way I like to present it to kids with, after they've been calm, maybe at the end of the night, is talk about it just like a muscle. Our brain is a muscle, right? And so the more that we practice things, the more that we try again and again, even if we don't get it right every time, we're building that muscle. And I say practice makes progress. We talk about that in the show as well. Yes. Maybe not perfection, but really sort of putting it in a way for kids where they can understand that it's so important to keep trying again, because that muscle grows and eventually they will get the skill.
Just because these podcasts are pretty new still, and now they're going to be released every Thursday with the episode, I just would like whoever's listening to us to hear again from you why it is so important to talk about these feelings, to name them, to validate them, to let them be that what impact this can have for them as they grow up.
Yes. I mean, having strong emotional intelligence, having a solid emotional vocabulary, which thereby, helping them and for them, teaching them now the skills to be able to manage those emotions is so impactful. It really leads to young adults, adolescents, adults with more emotional resilience. And that resilience can be so protective against developing, more severe mental health symptoms in the setting of big emotions, big life changes, big stressors, for them to be able to tolerate distress, right, effectively and not crumble as a result of it.
And I hope too that the listeners, just by listening to you, are also learning the skills so they can model it for their own children.
Yes, that is the goal. Kids learn so much more from watching us, from our examples, than from what we tell them. So in summary, we've talked a little bit about frustration and how it can look like in young kids, but also how as parents we can support our kids so that they can learn to manage frustration effectively and become resilient in the face of bigger frustrations down the line. We've talked about how frustration disguises itself. It can look like they're sabotaging or wrecking their own work, going helpless, blaming you for things. It's a mismatch between what they can picture and what their hands can do. You have to remember that piece. And it's not a sign of poor resilience at this point in their lives, at this developmental phase. At the peak of frustration, they cannot hear us. So help their body first with a push or a squeeze, a movement break, moving away from that setting into a different setting, a different space, or a sensory change. And once they're settled, then name how hard it is, validate the feeling, validate their experience without jumping in to fix it. Then when you come back to the activity or whatever it is that they were doing that really triggered the frustration, help them with 10%. So help them with part of it, help them start it, give them a launch pad, and let them complete the task on their own. So kids who get to move through frustration with their bodies and their environment instead of being lectured or rescued out of it, grow into adults who can sit with a hard project, a tough career stretch, or a steep learning curve and not quit. And that is the goal that we have for our next generation of children that we're helping raise at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Karen, so much. I really appreciate all your knowledge, your information, and sharing it with us. I really do.
Absolutely. That stamina starts on the living room floor over a shoelace.
It surely does, doesn't it? Well, thank you for watching this podcast again. We hope we'll see you next week. We also want to thank Dot Juice for always providing us with fresh squeezed juices. We've been so thankful for them. And also watch the episode on frustration that we have on YouTube in Lulubug's Garden. And tune in with us next week with our next podcast.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.